I have been disappointed with how The Lord of the Rings of Power portrayed High King Gil galad, but Season 2, Episode 7, completely turned this around. While the Prime Video series has been more or less faithful to Tolkien's works regarding the Noldor King, there has just been something about him that falls flat. Sure, Gil galad is portrayed as a strong and wise ruler, the first wearer of Vilya, the Elven Ring of Power, and a mentor to Elrond. However, Rings of Power neglected the coolest aspects of Gil galad's character for all of Season 1 and much of Season 2. When Amazon first announced its Second Age Lord of the Rings series, I was eager to see Gil galad brought to the screen. He had an almost negligible part in Peter Jackson's movie trilogy, appearing only briefly alongside Galadriel and Círdan as wearers of the three Elven Rings and again during the highly abridged Last Alliance of Elves and Men scene. Rings of Power was a chance to remedy this since Gil galad is a highly important character of the Second Age who would hopefully get much more attention in the Prime Video series. Now, my wish has finally been granted. Gil galad the warrior in the Rings of Power Season 2 is a vast improvement. This is the Gil galad I imagined for Rings of Power. Gil galad in armor in Rings of Power. Gil galad has been a predominantly political figure in the Rings of Power Season 1 and Season 2. However, the Siege of Eregion provided the perfect opportunity for this elf to finally be the warrior I had hoped for. In Tolkien canon, Gil galad wasn't just a wise and intuitive king, he was a feared force on the battlefield, especially when wielding his spear, Aeglos. I couldn't help but become giddy when Gil galad rode into battle in Rings of Power Season 2, Episode 7. When he pulled out Aeglos and began laying waste to orcs, I was entirely satisfied. This is the High King Gil galad I've been looking for. The Rings of Power's Gil galad has been less impressive than the original version. Gil galad the politician just isn't cutting it. I have not been left wanting in the way of Benjamin Walker's performance as Gil galad. He certainly looks the part, and I appreciate that Rings of Power has not left the Noldor King looking foolish as often as it has Galadriel. Though a bit stubborn and prideful, all qualities typical of Noldor royalty, Gil galad has still been shown to be wise and somewhat no-nonsense. He has brought political intrigue to Rings of Power, and while that is important, it's a bit of a letdown compared to the character described by Tolkien in The Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion. Gil galad isn't supposed to be only a king telling everyone no and worrying about his kingdom. He is destined to form the last alliance of elves and men and lead his people, alongside Gondor's Elendil, to fight against Sauron. The fact that Gil galad's spear is known to the enemy by name is an indication of just how lethal he is with Aeglos in hand. This is the character I had been looking for in Rings of Power, and up to Season 2, Episode 7, he was nowhere to be seen. Now that Gil galad has had a real battle in the Prime Video series, hopefully, we will see much more of this side of him. How strong is Gil galad compared to Middle-earth's other elf characters? Gil galad proved himself during the Second Age. Gil galad holding his spear in Rings of Power. The Lord of the Rings is full of powerful elf characters. Glorfindel is a common favorite, strong enough to defeat a Balrog, though he lost his life in the effort. Fingolfin faced off against Morgoth and did serious damage to the Dark Lord before falling. While Gil galad never had the opportunity to fight against Balrogs or villainous Vala, he stood his ground in combat against Sauron and did the villain's body great damage before he himself was killed. If it wasn't for Gil galad's efforts, with Elendil by his side, Isildur could never have cut the One Ring from Sauron's finger. While all of this is true in Tolkien canon, I was afraid that Rings of Power was doing away with this version of his character. Perhaps Prime Video intended to give Elendil and Isildur all the glory in the last alliance of elves and men, and Gil galad would remain a political figure. However, my fears here have officially been calmed. The elf who stood his ground in a doomed battle will undoubtedly have more excellent moments yet to come in Rings of Power. Gil galad's life may be doomed in Rings of Power, but the series is all geared up to present him as one of the greatest badasses of the Second Age, just as it should.